hello. Thank you for being on the Be Loved podcast.
Hello, Sage. Yeah, thanks for inviting me and having this opportunity.
Yeah, it's nice to be connecting. We've connected in a lot of different ways over the last year. Look forward to other ways in the future. And I'm excited for just this next hour to get into a little more of your story, the story of how love has moved in your life, called you on the journey that you have been on, how it's moving right now in the nexus of life that you're living in as the pastor of the Wayfarers Chapel. In its time of great transition, lots of transitions at the moment, and you are in one of those transition points. I wonder where you might like to begin.
Let's see. Sure. I mean, maybe a little bit of the background because
Yeah.
that's a good segue into some recent things, including what I was mentioning to you earlier about this launch of a new youth program, because that's kind of a full circle thing as well. For anyone that doesn't know, I was, well, it's an interesting kind of story, I guess, going from graduating from UC Santa Barbara in film studies, and then after graduating, moving up to the Bay Area, where there's not quite the film industry as there is in Los Angeles. And it was really this, growing up in Northern California, they are really pretty two diverse, kind of being a native Californian, I kind of flippantly call them two states. There's actually more like three states, and then you go to four because you've got the state of that wants to be the state of Jefferson. That's kind of like Northern California and part of Oregon. And there's the ethos that's very Northern California. Central Coast has its own. So anyhow, I was very resistant to this idea of Los Angeles. And so I've been joking for nearly a couple decades now that it took an act of God to get me down here. And so, yeah, I mean, I ended up doing, about 5 years in banking, Bank of America, and then Union Bank, and then also KPMG, one of the big four accounting firms. And actually, right before coming here to Wayfarers Chapel, I was working in a high-tech startup in San Francisco called Breathwork Media. That was 2005, looking at this crazy thing I'd never heard of called search engine optimization. And while that was all for what it was, getting down here and getting into the ministry of Wayfarers Chapel has been one of those just wow moments. So not only, pretty intense ministry, but also starting a family, full life. But then to give some backstory to the ministry side where love is moving, I got into the ministry. My call to ministry was more familiar. Cody.
Oh, we have a dog visitor. Excellent.
Yes, he'll come back.
Welcome all life forms on the Be Loved podcast. So that's fine.
He'll make a. All right, you want to be seen? All right, here you are. Here's Cody.
This is Cody. Okay. Hey, Cody.
Hello, Cody. Say hello to the universe here.
Full orange golden retriever.
Yes, he's a red golden. I have him at the Garden Church.
Mm-hmm.
He's a part of the ministry team there. He definitely brings people off the street there as a greeter.
He's a part of your family and your ministry. Very cool. So you were telling us about your call to ministry. Tell us about that part.
Yeah. So, I'm actually, so here's getting into the fun stuff. I'm actually starting to write about that in more detail. It's obviously an intensely personal story in terms of that, how it happens. But that was when I was living in Hawaii in 1999 on the island of Oahu in a studio apartment in Honolulu, going to, I had enrolled in a Master of Science in Information Systems program. And yeah, I mean, I had this experience that, stay tuned. I'll be writing more details about that. So, but that was a turning point. I mean, it was easy to get the call. As anyone that's had a call, answering that is often the more challenging.
That's the harder part. Yes. Embodying the spirit into the natural realm is always where it gets.
Yeah. And how that plays out. So as you well know, Sage, because we went to seminary at the same time, this whole thing that happens, I thought So I grew up Methodist, the United Methodist Church, and actually my letters of recommendation to go to seminary came from the youth minister, Darren. And so I was planning on doing youth ministry as my calling, and that all changed at PSR as we know, where I found you guys, and it was a discernment process for me to figure that out. So just jumping ahead to the kind of the rounding that out, we had Chris Leitner on my channel, the Exploring New Earth on Sundays, where you'll be showing up December 7th, coming up soon. What was great was we had Chris Leitner, not only the first woman president of the Swedish Mormon Church of North America, but also the first layperson.
Yeah.
And so she had a double whammy there. So she's been great. She's been showing up there, and she was reminding that she was entering in the conversation with Kurt Fekete as the youth director. Kind of that transitional moment too for him back in 2001. Chris was reminding me about my discernment process, saying, well, we already have someone basically that's a youth director.
Yeah.
And so I had Kurt on just a couple Sundays ago, and he was so we were having a bit of this conversation about gosh, how the 20 years can be like the blink of an eye. I mean, this whole thing about time, it's a little bit of a strange okay, sorry for the interruption, but he's back.
He's back.
They go to say hello. All right, you got in time. Hello. Okay. Yes. So anyhow, the full story, full circle part about that, and part of the reason why I have a bit of a timeline today, because I set this up, I wanted to honor our time. But in the span of setting this up, the St. Francis Episcopal Church launches today at 4:30, so just about an hour and 15 minutes from now, a youth program. And the fun part about this, and this was also set up before I had, happened after I'd set up Kurt to be on as a guest. So the nice thing about this is it's open to all teens. You don't have to be a member of St. Francis Episcopal Church. Don't have to be a member of Wayfarers Chapel. And I think, it'll translate hopefully to when we reopen as the Phoenix Chapel, the Wayfarers Chapel 2.0, that some sort of youth program could happen, because there has not been a youth program at Wayfarers Chapel in multiple decades. I mean, maybe back in the 50s they might have had something going on, but that's pretty exciting. And then to talk about this with Kurt and have this dialogue, and he offered that assuming it's a success and it launches, that he and some teens will fly out and host a weekend retreat and multi-night overnight. And I'm just so excited that could happen, because that's been a dream for a long time as well.
Dream fulfilled. I love that. I love that. And tell me, so you were a youth in youth group, I'm assuming. That's where this love started as a teenager yourself?
Yeah. And we had some of that sharing with Kurt about the impact of those retreats and programs, including things that I didn't know about historically. I guess here on the West Coast, there was it in Kern County. It was, what was it, Split Mountain.
Yes, I've heard about that.
Where I understand David Fekete hitchhiked up into Canada and down to get to this camp, and
kind of an outdoor camp experience.
Yes,
pretty rustic, correct?
Yes.
Yeah.
And I'm learning more about the online community I'm doing on Sundays, because Dorothea, who's joining us, she was, I guess, in San Diego as a youth, and she went to Split Mountain, so she remembers it was very, very cold at night. And so that was ways ago in the Wayback Machine, but it's just nice to hear other people's stories about how these experiences are really, and I'm still friends with someone from my youth group. I mean, you make these lifelong friends, and just it's nice to have some place outside of school that kind of transcends the boundaries there. And so all those great experiences. And then the other thing I was mentioning that was important for me growing up were the service projects, like on the East Coast is kind of where it came from, the Appalachian service project, and then that came out to the West, 1973. The Sierra Service Project became part of that, and it would be going to, well, sometimes it's international too. Like I went to Tecate, Mexico to help build some homes, and really exciting, especially to be a youth when you don't, you're more focused on school and stuff, but you have to, you have to go and earn some money even to go on this trip, and then you're in these teams with other churches from,
Mm-hmm.
sometimes around different states, areas, regions, and you're joining together for a week. You really form these really incredible bonds while you're there.
Yeah.
And you're strangers when you arrive, and everyone just like crying at the end.
Yes.
So those are memorable. And then just what you're able to do out of service, and all these good positive things that we need more of in the world. In Mexico, we actually built an entire, a house for a family in 3 days.
Wow.
First day, you got a team, and you're pouring the foundation. Second day, you're coming on site with a crew. You're already putting in the framing of this. And then day three, you're framing windows, doing the doors, putting the roof on, and there are some finishing touches after that. But it's just incredibly impressive what you can do with a team that's motivated, and you're also having fun. So those were really meaningful, and it did inspire me to do a international service project while at Wayfarers Chapel, which was in 2009. We did uh, a Nepal service project. So I took a
Right.
group um, from Wayfarers, and it's great. This when I talk about that, they're some of the longtime parishioners, they're still involved, and they remember that journey, and they're still, you still get to see the journey of some of those youth that we visited then have now graduated, and one's become a doctor, one's doing fashion in Milan. And so these were orphanages that we spent time at. Amagar is one in the Kathmandu Valley, and then also, also joined up with Loving Arms Mission, which I
Right.
think is still going, but it's in a slightly different form. But that was downtown Kathmandu area. Just great to go between two orphanages and do a service project like that. And so but yeah, the youth ministry. I participated in that and still
Mm-hmm.
love it. Well, we'll see in a few minutes.
Well, we'll see how it goes. That's exciting. That's exciting. And I'd like to hear that you've done similar kinds of things with adults. I think this is one of my questions, because I had a similar experience as a youth, being really involved in retreats. We didn't do as many service projects. That probably would have been enlightening. It was more just getting together and being with kids that you're not normally with, and you can just create a really different vibe what you normally have at school and life. It can be so sacred, so transformative, and I do wonder if that can translate to adults as well. Can we go away for 2 days and form those same kind of different connections than you maybe get in the day-to-day life, or even the week-to-week life of congregations? Did the adults congeal? Did some new relationships emerge in that trip to Nepal?
Yes. I
Yeah,
mean, it was different than, I think it's a different experience when you're an adult. So I think,
things are a little more flexible, maybe.
yeah, no,
Yeah.
I'm actually, I mean, part of my, doing my doctoral thesis
Hmm.
project is actually more towards how to kind of access that for adults in a
Mm,
more of a retreat setting, where it's really doing a deep dive into some, tr- you know basically taking you out of your element in order to access the spiritual dimension, and then not completely let it go when you leave that setting.
right,
I think
right.
that, I'm still working on how that might actually work out.
Still asking that question. Have any answers emerged? Any elements that are really helpful for that to go well?
I think so. Yeah, I mean, it's you know I'm pretty busy right now with 3 kids, single dad, dog, as you got to meet,
Yes.
and 2 jobs.
Yeah.
You know, so that alone is 6 days a week, and I get to test some of this out a little bit when I go over to the garden church, and you're interacting with the public, and some of those things that I put some research into, they are powerful techniques in those situations, just you know, helping someone connect to their breathing, sitting down and doing something as simple as that, especially when someone's like prone to panic attacks or other things. And you're dealing with, a lot of housing insecure, food insecure people there. And so it's kind of a wild range where you can go from on the Palos Verdes Peninsula to Sixth Street in San Pedro, and every kind of slice of life that hard to I find a lot of joy in just that diversity too of populations as well. Actually, these days I'm finding um, just how meaningful that is, to be over there. A good example, we had like, I think it was 32 people, 31, 32 people this past Sunday. And, you know, at the Garden Church, it was raining here in Los Angeles recently, and we had to move everything indoors. And so we had to go across the street. And so, you know, it's pretty beautiful to have a tabernacle that you unpack, and that's your church. Because I was sharing with people there as well. I said, well, it felt pretty special to have the tabernacle in my vehicle, and I'm riding my metaphorical chariot to
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
create service.
Mm-hmm.
Part of it too especially with the government shutdown and food insecurity and people, I that was awareness for me. I honestly did not know that 42 million Americans rely on SNAP, 1 out of 8 um, people, and that, I think it's 1.1 million people just here in the Los Angeles area. And so, being able to do a food justice ministry, and so we have our time with a meal at the end of the service at 5 p.m. on Sundays, and just to see, kind of how this lives out with people in real need. Some people just show up for the meal, which is fine, and they want to be there for the service. But just you, you know, people want to show up and be part of it. And so some of the comments were, we could have this as kind of like church on the road if we wanted to. We got our tabernacle and
Sure.
show up, and so that was just kind of a fun reminder of different types of ministry, but also meaningful ministry. And we had a moment, a couple weeks ago where we have our ministry meeting, Reverend Dr. Amanda Adams Riley, myself, actually Connie, licensed pastor Connie I think she had to work that day, but it was a Friday, and it was right when the news that the SNAP was not coming through. And we're talking about this, and at the gate, someone's saying, "Hey, hello," and they were asking if we had some snack bags. And it was nice to be able to respond in real time, like, "Here you go." And they were giving us information as well. We called this morning. There's 0 on the card. You know, we're getting hungry. So, that's when all of this stuff that's kind of like up here gets grounded and real quick. When you're having these conversations,
Yeah.
you're talking to people,
Yeah.
and you're able to provide that. So,
Mm-hmm.
like I said, I'm very blessed to be in a position to be there and to have those moments, especially what we're going through right now with everything in our country. And it's
Yeah.
not just our country. I mean, we're in a time of upheaval, and I think that's we could get into some theology there about I was thinking about that, about the vast station
Mm-hmm.
breaking down. I titled, where are we, Tuesday? I guess that was Sunday. I called it another sermon from the compost heap, where we're, at the Garden Church more than many of our other churches. You're actually engaged in the decomposition of things, the breaking down, actively, chopping up broccoli, chopping up celery, chopping up all these things and putting them together, mixing them, and creating something that is so necessary for existence. We all have to eat. So, for some, that's the level they participate is in that. But there's also the community building that happens. People want to bring their coffee grounds, their banana peels, their eggshells, and so it's just you know, it's an engaging ministry for the community, different ways of showing ministry, and it's working. They have the placard now. It's been around for 10 years.
A while, yeah. I love how so much of your sharing has been this the divine and the natural, these mission trips and acts of service and feeding people food and helping people to get their needs met. I mean, it does feel like that is such sacred ground. And I know that's very much at the heart of a lot of what I'm trying to speak to and create is our theology has to be embodied. It has to be, we have to bring we can't just sit in ecstasy on the beach. I mean, we can for a little while, but eventually we got to come back to the earth and come back to each other. I love how the Garden Church does that, and these mission trips do that. Are you feeling like there's some heaven and earth coming together with all that's going on with Wayfarers right now, with its homeless state at the moment?
Right. Yeah, what's super interesting about this journey, because especially since, well, you obviously, we both know Reverend Anna Woofenden and the founder of the Garden Church. And I remember some of those conversations about, where in the world might this vision land, as she was a seminary student. And it was helpful to come and visit and see Wayfarers Chapel. It's established. And I've had these discussions not only with Anna at the time, but then over the years, Dr. Jonathan Mitchell as well, about kind of the two types of that we see also in the Bible, right? We have the great temple in Jerusalem as a fixed place that was sacred, that people went and journeyed to, and then, the other one of the Israelites in the wilderness and the unpacking of the tabernacle. And so I do feel blessed to experience both of those.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember at the time, it was more of a conversation of how the one that's been in a fixed spot that people, I realized that the structure of Wayfarers Chapel was its own ministry, that people would do pilgrimages to it. And I realized this in a deeper way during COVID, when the rest of the world was shut down. I heard this story from our gardener there, Eleazar, that there was a married couple who would go there in the mornings before it was light out. And at the base of the stairs, which is like, the really steep staircase at the very bottom, which is kind of how you were supposed to experience it, would take off their shoes and like go on their knees up the steps.
Wow.
And then, even though it was closed to the public, essentially they would just go up to the door and then make their way back. And so it had it was serving its own ministry. I call it the invisible ministry. Some people have had that experience where they're walking on the grounds, and I think it's not only the intention of the structure, sacred geometry, but also just all of the life events that have taken place and the memories and all of that. So the establishment of the Garden Church was a little bit, well, you've got some notoriety in the area. We can point to you and say, yeah, that place over there that's well known, that we're part of that. We're a sister ministry here. And fast forward over the years, and now that the largest, fastest moving landslide in all of North America has taken out Wayfarers Chapel, which is devastating too, because landslides are categorically not covered. As devastating as all the fires were just earlier this year, Palisades and those fires here in Los Angeles area, a lot of those, because they were fire, they're covered by insurance. And so they're ready. They got a check. They're ready to rebuild. They still got the land. Yeah, there's other things. So, it was devastating because, we were taken out by a landslide, and there was no insurance policy. We got denied policy within like days or minutes of everything getting shut down. So it's been hard. And then you also have like this spiritual grief.
Yeah.
And spiritual injury from place that was your touchstone to something. And even if you didn't come there on Sundays, you would come onto the grounds and you would visit memorial bricks or a bench or something that was your spot. And it, really got to understand how important that was for so many, not just here locally, but across Los Angeles. I mean, it's yeah. So to go through that, and then just also the parishioners losing their sacred space. So multiple levels of grief, of loss, of just how do we navigate that, and yet I think the beauty of all this just shines through in all the people that reached out, and the reason why we're at St. Francis is because of the generosity of Reverend Jason Shelby, the rector there, and his congregation, who were really living out, talk about embodiment of the teachings of Christ,
Mm-hmm.
and living that out. It was, really looking at our situation, and understanding if it were us, we would hope that you would do the same for us,
Yeah.
and treating one another as you would like to be treated, and all the
All these
stuff.
things we talk about.
So, just to kind of tease that out a little bit, the journey of that loss, of understanding in a new way that it's not about the structure. We are the church individual, the body temple, and our strength is as community. That's been a lesson we're all relearning, I suppose, as part of our journey. Kind of the ironic twist of fate, destiny, whatever you want to call it, is this all happened to Wayfarers Chapel, and it's been devastating. Everyone's talking about that. However, that's the thing that I'm really is still energizing me, and is that the Garden Church is now kind of established there in San Pedro. It's gotten recognition. People know about it. I mean, what was that? It was for Halloween, which happened on a Friday this year. We had, I think it was 179 people come through the gates in 2 hours. And so, the connection to the community, and, so just kind of making this a full circle story.
Yeah.
Whereas it started as something it was, me, Michaela, my daughter, Reverend Anna, and Sarah Miles out on a field with a basket, kind of fine tuning the liturgy and saying, yeah, this is how it is, and we're just going to do it. And, just showing up, and doesn't matter how many people are there, and continuing to show up. It's grown to this thing where it's now, incredibly well known in the area. The community knows about it. They all participate in it. I'm there where I'm still, 3/4 time minister at Wayfarers Chapel, and people are asking, so where's your other ministry? And I'm like, well, you remember that thing over there that was on the hill? That's no longer there. We're now meeting here. And so it's almost like the roles are reversed.
Yeah.
When
Yeah.
I'm there, people obviously know what I'm doing there,
Yeah.
and they're asking what my other ministry is.
Yeah.
And for many years, it was kind of like, what's this garden church
With
thing?
this garden business. Yeah. It's beautiful. I mean, and it's such a, talking about the church being the body temple, being inside. And when the church is inside, we can choose to do really cool things like build a church in a garden or build a glass chapel. And those things that we create, they do have a lifespan because they're material, right? They do have the temple in the Bible is torn down, it doesn't last forever. So there's that cycle of creation and destruction, and hopefully and creation again. How is the journey to creating the Wayfarers Chapel again? How is that moving at this moment?
Yeah, it's still moving, so
Yeah.
that's good.
Okay.
The long and the short of it, it's a lot of politics. If you go visit our website, you can see the prospective drawings, the renderings that are
Mm-hmm.
there, and they're positioned for this site, which is called Battery Barns. It's still right as of the second owned by the Coast Guard. So it's working with the city of Rancho Palos Verdes and also the officials. We got Almer Tsuchi, we got Ben Allen, we got others. And so the good news is the Coast Guard has been already working on decommissioning. So it
Yeah.
has obviously there's separation of church and state, and they have to
Right.
recognize that it is a government to government transaction that we're looking at, which is between the Coast Guard and the city of Rancho Palos Verdes.
Hmm.
And so from that perspective, we're technically more on the quiet phase of fundraising, where it's not being advertised. We're trying to raise half of it before before, once we get the land, I think that's when people will start to
Really step up.
donate in a lot more, with more seriousness, because we
Yes.
have the land, and
Yeah.
that's big.
It's ready to go.
And so there's a lot of people have kind of said that to me, or communicated that to me in various ways of, we want to donate as soon as find the land. We're on board. Reach back then. But we do have a fundraising campaign that is on our website as well. The links to give butter, and some people have been making donations that are monthly, and so it is going. We overhauled the whole website kind of to gear around this for fundraising efforts, and we are looking at some pretty big dollars. I mean, and we're talking in the range 20 to 30 million, which
Yeah.
is pretty substantial.
Yeah.
So by the time we reach 10 to 15, that's when we would make a more public, get the media outlets and celebrate this in a big way, because we already know it's going to happen, and we're just kind of
Hmm.
finishing the crossing line. So, that's pretty common for a lot of people in the fundraising arena, that you want to have half of your money made before you go into the bigger, more public phase of that. And that, really means, and we do have someone on staff that's helping with us with that, Susan Wilcox, who has a long track record. She's been working with the Palos Verdes Land Conservancy for many years, and we know similar people who are having the same conversation with her, saying, as her friend, saying, if I ever, the only thing that could bring me out of retirement is seeing Wayfarers Chapel come back. And so that was just exciting to see people that really, know their stuff, willing to step up, because it is something that, the community wants, people want, all the parishioners, the congregation want, and it's pretty exciting from that perspective, because a lot of people gave up. They just said, all right, it's gone. It was a nice ride for 70 years. And so I think this has reignited a whole lot in, the public imagination of not only what is possible, but looking at what we can do into the future with modern materials, and even potentially improvement. I sometimes say this, as I'm giving updates to the congregation meeting at the St. Francis Episcopal Church, that it may sound like heresy, but Wayfarers 2.0, quite possibly is going to be even better than the original, because it is a much wider vantage point of the ocean, more dramatic sweeping views. You can see Point Vicente Lighthouse from that plot of land as well. It'll be a different experience. But the other thing, if you've ever seen any photos, we have a presentation now, and I've been did this at the Peninsula Senior Center just a couple of Wednesdays ago, where we have a slide deck, and we have one or two of these on our website as well. But unless you visited the grounds from about 1958 to about 1978, 79, you never got to see the entire structure as a contiguous chapel through the colonnade all the way to the old visitor center in one piece, because the landslide's been around since 1954, and it took out the old visitor center.
It's been helpful to hear all that's transpiring. And before we say goodbye, I wonder if you want to just share, in that big mix of life that is yours, parenting, garden church, Wayfarers. Is there any streams that are emerging for you that are feeling most exciting? And maybe it's the New Earth ministry that we haven't really talked too much about.
Yeah.
Discussion groups that you've been having.
So, so that's been a new launch for this year, and that I've been very impressed how, even though people are tuning in from other places, it's been reconnecting. People have been followers, been reading Swedenborg, but they're not near a church. Like I was mentioning, Dorothea, was down in San Diego. She's now up in Washington State, but remembers Split Mountain
Mm-hmm.
and is engaged there on Sundays. Others, they're just busy. We have some people that will be going through airport security, but they want to be there
Yeah.
as well. And we're having some fun topics. Yeah, we explored some really powerful topics. I hadn't come across this guy, Dr. David Hawkins.
For sure. Yeah,
Oh
he's
yeah.
great.
So you've read him. I mean, I
I've
didn't.
watched his YouTube videos. There's a lot of videos of him speaking on YouTube. I've actually not read any of his books, but
Oh
I've
well,
watched him speak.
you and your audience, when you get a chance, letting go, the pathway of surrender,
Okay.
and then he also has his map of consciousness
Mm-hmm.
is
Yeah.
available, which is great, just as a reference for people.
Mm-hmm.
And I think he kind of follows a very similar journey as Emmanuel Swedenborg, right?
Yeah.
He's a scientist. He gets really in there, and then at the age of 50, he has all these health problems just because he's not taking time to care for himself. But the way that he is able to do it is he kind of figures it out on his own. There's one really, really, and then what some simple things like raising your energy, your spiritual vibration. I did this as an experiment. It was about a 3-week summer vacation with taking the kids camping, and I tried this. It's as simple as some other people have called it the surrender experiment. Can I let go of anger? Can I let go of fear? And then see when those energies are reemerging, and just like paying attention to it conscientiously. Can I let it go? And it would have it, and while empowering would be one thing, but also interesting to see the awareness coming up of like, do I really need to hold on to that? And there are others that are talking about similar things. It's kind of like the metaphor of holding a thick rope, and you're holding onto it and you're pulling, and maybe on the other end it's a large football team on the other side, and we can build up our muscles and dig in and all this stuff. Most of us never consider the other option. We're just simply dropping it. And so I really got into to that and brought that into some of my um, Exploring New Earth series on Sundays from 12 to 1 Pacific Standard Time. The other one is Power versus Force. And I think for our times right now, we're talking about just political unrest and upheaval. He has some great examples of that because he tests Mahatma Gandhi versus the British Empire. So we've got power versus force. And just by testing out on the scale of where they are, the higher up you go, that no amount of force is ever going to be able to overtake the power of kind of resting in that state. So, those are great things. I think when we're talking about like, especially spiritual things and the reason why we would want to invest in, um, gaining more and better spiritual awareness, putting that to practice every day and building that up. Not only is it resistance, puts us in a good state of mind, or being less
Mm-hmm.
less doing, more
Less
being,
mind, more being. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
getting out of our own way. So he also has this moment where he was talking about how just allowing that was the path of healing for him, where he kind of, you know yeah, he still did lots of studies, but he was also giving this one lecture, and he was talking about how the body naturally could heal. And someone points out, how come you're still wearing glasses? And he says, wow, you're right. And he takes off his glasses and he does this experiment. It took him 6 weeks. And apparently he says, I went out, didn't wear anything, no glasses. There were a few close calls when he was driving, but he said I could see what I needed to see. And then he ends with, and I guess there was one moment driving, he nearly went over the edge of a cliff. However, he made it to 6 weeks, and week 6, 2020, uncorrected vision. He went back to get his driver's license renewed, and they're like, well, we've never seen this, and they had to remove the corrected and uncorrected. And so, I haven't taken. I have to give a public service announcement when I say these stories, just to
Sure. Yeah.
someone that kind of has come to a similar understanding that's, he's also very similar to, another person I love, Eckhart Tolle, and The Power of Now and A New Earth, which is, um, very much in line with what we're talking about. So I did want to announce that in launching in 2026
Mm-hmm.
is Exploring New Earth Plus, ENE Plus. And it's going to be once a month. And we're kicking this off with Reverend Dr. James Lawrence.
Mm-hmm.
And he's going to be talking about his leading insights and thoughts about not only some of the history of Wayfarers Chapel, where we are, but also where we're going. So that's at 6 p.m. on Tuesday, the 20th.
Cool.
And so that's exciting, because that's in addition to what I'm doing on Sundays.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I'm always thankful when I get past the third Sundays of the month, because that's when I do the regular service at St. Francis, the Exploring New Earth, and then I head over to the Garden Church and do that. So
A lot on your plate. Yeah.
that's
Yeah.
a triple whammy of a day.
Well, I love hearing your interest in David Hawkins and others, because it does feel like Swedenborg had this incredible experience, and other people are having these incredible experiences to tap into all the possibilities of the human experience that our regular mind is not privy to. But there are these ways to get even deeper in, and I think there's a lot of possibility in those conversations. They make me very excited. That's cool.
Yeah, yeah. Been also getting into a lot of the Michael Singer podcasts as
Michael
well.
Singer, he's a great one. Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I
Yeah.
mean, there's a lot of people doing this stuff, and it's really fascinating too. Wim Hof, doing his breathing. I mean, I've been
Mm-hmm.
doubling down on my breathing techniques,
Mm-hmm.
because that's also, powerful in terms of getting your body alkaline, grounded. You can, reboot your, sympathetic nervous system, parasympathetic, getting it to a grounded, safe place, which, we're bringing this back full circle to youth group. I think that was a couple conventions ago where the keynote speaker was talking about what the youth are craving. It's
Mm-hmm.
they want a kind of a grounded, centered adult to model that energy. And that is something that I did youth work for a while, and
Mm-hmm.
I made this observation 25 years ago. I said, well, you know, a lot of what I'm witnessing is just kind of like a reprogramming of whatever's on the calendar of the parents being placed onto the overly committed, programming. The children are going around, bouncing around to one thing or another. And I was
Mm-hmm.
like, where's the spirituality part to this? Where's the being part? So, I think there's hopefully more attention going to that, and certainly in half an hour I might experiment with some of that. But this was also part of the youth program. I mentioned this with Kurt about. We thought it's fascinating. They were doing the box breathing as part of their presentation, and so you know, so in kind of strange synthesis of what's happening here, more people are talking about mystical experiences, connection to, um, the next realm. And I did a recent sermon just pointing out, like, people shouldn't be thinking this is really strange. I mean, Jesus, when he goes up on the mountaintop, is talking to Abraham and or Moses and Elijah. We're talking about, like, the portals opening and the access to those, and they were having a conversation about Jesus exiting this world. And so that was right around Halloween. I thought that was a nice connection piece to, spiritual portals opening. And it's happening more. I think the connection to breathing, and I think Wim Hof's, just explosion onto the scene these past few years, especially with COVID, and, not only being something that can help our immune system, but showing the world, like, we have control and power over our physiology. We can gain some control over our health. He's been getting into, you know, longevity and telomeres and all of that. I read a book, another gem of a book I've read in the past few years. It's called Breathe by James Nestor, and just a fascinating piece of work that, took about a decade for him to research, but it's also a great one. But the connection between breathing, eat not so much. I mean, I'm doing intermittent fasting. I'm realizing, like, wait a second, this all seems quite familiar to the path that
Mm-hmm.
Daniel
Yeah.
was on with eat not so much and
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
hypnagogic states and controlled breathing.
Yeah.
So, I think there's a rich reawakening on our planet right now. That's,
Yeah.
the Holy Spirit's on the move.
Holy Spirit is on the move. I love that. I love that. Yes. There's something reawakening. It does feel like it's picking up speed. Thank you for your role in it, Dave, and all that you're doing to bring love and connection and community in the world. This has been a great conversation.
Yes, absolutely. And looking forward to having you on Exploring
Yeah.
Earth on Sunday, 12 to 1 Pacific Standard Time.
That will be fun, and have fun with the teenagers.
Okay, will do.
When we both are in